Welcome back live to Blue Collar Sports, everyone, and thank you for tuning in today. It is just about halfway past 3, which means we still got another great half hour with you. We run from 2 to 4 p.m. every afternoon from Tuesday to on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And we got a great show so far today. We've talked about the NFL Combine, NFL news, MLB news, college basketball news, and lots of hoops, which we're still going to get to later on in today's show as well. I'm your co-host, Seth Newville, joined here with co-host Trevor Brennan. It's going to be a fun rest of the day.
Yeah, it's going to be a great segment now. In hour number 2, it's our 5th segment of the day. We just talked about the NFL Combine, our big winners and losers, and some of the NFL news. And we're going to stay with that aspect of the Combine, but now we're going to kind of go over to the interview stage. Not a lot of people get to talk about this because no one's in the actual interview except the team and the players themselves. But this is a big part of the NFL Combine. It really showcases who these players are in front of their prospective employers. So it's a big part of the Combine, and it's been in the news recently because the NFL Combine questions have always been up and down, kind of realistic questions, but also unrealistic questions. So we all thought it was very interesting on what was the biggest questions that were asked in the Combine. We also came up with our 5 Combine questions that we would ask if we were running the show and asking a player. So very interesting stuff. I know, Steph, you have some examples of what teams have asked players, and I think it's very funny, and then we're going to get into our top 5.
Yeah, Combine questions, when they get leaked, it always brings up a very interesting question, or a very interesting story. And a couple on here, I'm reading this site from For the Win on US Today Sports, and they talk about some of the players reflect on some of the weirdest questions they've been asked. One of them was, what is your murder weapon of choice? Pretty deep there. I'm not sure what information you're trying to get out. Would you rather be a cat or a dog? I think that's a pretty I would go dog for
Absolutely
sure.
A dog.
I mean, you got more. Well, I mean, cats can fight. Cats are scrappy.
That's
but,
if you're homeless.
Yeah. What color is chocolate? I think that's an interesting
White
one.
Or dark?
It can really be. There's a multitude.
Interesting.
That one said was the Arizona Cardinals asked. Common one they say is boxers or briefs. Another very, very interesting one. The one I heard from this, I can't remember what prospect it was, but I heard it got brought up that the prospect was asked to do a staring contest with the GM. And so they just had to sit there and stare at each other without blinking. That would be kind of awkward. I don't know how I like that, but I'm not sure what they're trying to figure out there.
These interviews have 15 minutes total, so what if it goes 15 minutes? I don't know what happens there.
That's a lot of talent if they could both go 15 minutes without blinking. That's a little scary. I don't know if I'd want a prospect that could go 15 minutes without blinking. That kind of terrified me. But yeah, we came up with our 5 own questions here. Some are about football and some are not about football. So I'm excited to get after it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, I'll kick it off with my number 1 question. I would ask a player right off the bat. This is what I would ask if they entered a room, and that is, let's say I'm a team. I'm going to ask, would you want to play for this team? And if they have any hesitation about playing for this team, then I'm done with the interview. I'm not going to talk to you because I want players that are going to play for this team, who want to compete. And if you don't want to be here, then I'm not going to waste my time. I'll move on to the next prospect who I want to interview. So if they say absolutely yes right off the bat, then I'm all in. I'll continue on with it. If they hesitate and maybe say yes later on, then okay, I'll keep it going. But if they say absolutely not, then I'll just move on from them and go to the next guy.
Well, what counts as a hesitation for you?
Seth, would you want to play? I'm the Arizona Cardinals. Would you want to be? Would you want to play for Arizona Cardinals?
So if I were to pause for a little bit, yeah, you would count that as a no.
If you have to think about it for a little bit. It depends. It depends how long it is. If they have to think about it, then not, because they need to come into that interview knowing who they're going to talk to, knowing that they want to be with this team, and so that's what I would want if I'm a team. I know if it's a team like the Cardinals who had a very bad year, and if you're a player like in the 3rd or 4th round who kind of just wants to win, then I don't know if you're the right guy for this team.
Actually, it reminds me of. And we talked about this, but it reminds me of the old 2K Road to Glory, whatever called My Player. I remember playing it. They get when you're going through the draft process or whatever. They ask you that question, and you can choose how you want to answer it. I mean, if it was a team I didn't like, of course I'd say no. And it'd be interesting to see if people would actually tell a team that they don't want to play for them. It'd be interesting to see that. But my first one has nothing to do with football. Kind of a weird one like these other ones. But I want to find out what their favorite cereal is. I think you can tell a lot. I'm a huge cereal fan. Cereal's like my midnight snack. You can have it in the morning. You can have it anytime. I'm gonna go home right after this and have a bowl of cereal. But
what if I told you I don't really like cereal?
Then I mean that's a red flag right off the bat. Everyone likes cereal, and I think you can tell. I mean, if they're like a Frosted Flakes, a Fruity Loops, I don't think they're a tough, gritty kind of guy. But if they're like a Cheerios or like a Wheaties, you know they're gonna tackle anything. And that's why I would want to ask that question. I think you could find out a lot about someone that likes cereal.
What if you're Quinnen Williams and had Oreos for breakfast?
Quinnen Williams, he could have whatever he wants. We need him big. He could obviously run fast, and we need him big, so he could have whatever he wants. Or they have cereal that's kind of like Oreos, so just throw some milk in there. You can throw a little bit more in there.
I like that one. Mine are pretty more realistic. I'm going to ask if I had a player, I'm going to ask, what's the biggest thing you learned in college? And I want them to think about that. I want them to not specifically focus on football, but think about the classes they took, what other activities they were involved in, what did they really learn through their 3 or 4 years during college, and what can they take away from that and bring to the NFL. I want to see if they're mature and ready to be a professional in the next step of their career in the NFL, and they're not stuck in college anymore and going to go party every Saturday night.
Deep time now. What's the biggest thing you've learned so far in college?
Biggest thing I learned is
3 years into it, 2.5, over 2.5.
That I don't like school.
That you don't like school. I'd be interested to see how NFL GMs take it. That sounds like what was that Ohio State? Cardell Jones.
Cardell Jones.
Like something he would say.
I'm only here to play football.
But my number 2 one, again, this one is not having to do with football either. But in terms of, I want to see how they respect that. I would ask them what they're. If you have 2 hours, so you got 2 hours, got all the money. What's your ideal first date to take someone on a first date? If you're into someone,
really,
where would you take them and why? I would just kind of be curious to see how they like spend their free time, what they
that's a good
how
one.
they do. I think it'd be interesting. Of course, if I want to pay someone a lot of money to come around, I want someone that's going to respect. Of course, their significant other. If they're not going to respect them,
right,
then they're not going to respect the football team or their job. So, I would ask that question. I think you get a lot of interesting answers.
That's a good one. And, most of these football players might not even have 2 hours to spend in extra time. But yeah, I think it definitely depends where you're at. Also, like I would take a girl out and go camping or something outdoors. But that's an interesting one. I don't know.
First date.
Hey, making progress. You gotta go for it. They don't have much time. They're playing football, so I think that's a good one. Mine, I'll stay with once they're drafted. That is, what will be their first purchase once you're drafted? That's what I would ask a player.
That's a good one.
I want to see where their mind's at. Well, we see a lot of players like Saquon Barkley. Their first purchase is usually for their mom or parents. They buy them a house or a car. I think that's the right answer for sure. Not always about you. I don't want a guy who's going to say, I'm going to go buy a Ferrari. I'm going to go buy a mansion. That's not what I want to hear. I want to hear something that's about giving back to their community or family and really making progress to becoming a professional.
Yeah, I like that question a lot. That's a tough one to answer, too. What would you say your first purchase would be? I've of course never had NFL money, so if I were to all of a sudden get this check for however how much it is, your first signing check or whatever, it'd be tough to know.
I'm always thinking food, so I'd probably go to the restaurant and eat a nice dinner, but I'd probably give back to my family and give them a nice car or a new house.
Yeah, if you're watching this, Mom, I would get you something, Mom or Dad or any family member. I'd probably go that route as well. My third one is kind of similar to that one a little bit, but more about afterwards. And I ask about their plan for life after football. Because I love what Bruce Arians, I watched this, or I saw this comment Bruce Arians made this week, new coach for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, how he talked about he's going to fire his staff members if they don't attend one of their kids' like recitals or sporting events. And I think that's a cool mindset. I know he's always been a big believer in the 8 to 9 to 5 lifestyle where he doesn't believe in overworking his staff. And of course, obviously, when you're on an NFL team, when you're running an NFL team, you're going to work a lot. There's a lot of work. There's a lot of money involved, a lot going on. But I want to make sure my players know that there's life outside of that, and I want to know their plan. If football doesn't go right, what are you going to do afterwards? I think it'd be interesting to see. I'm big in having people around you that are prepared, that are organized, that know what they want, and that's what I want to know if I was an NFL GM.
Yeah, that's a great question because more than half of these players probably won't even end up in the league and even be in the league in 2 years. So I think that's a great question because most of them won't even be playing football. They're going to have to get a new job after football. So I think that's a fantastic question if they really want to stick with it or move into a new direction. So that's a great question. Another one I had was, what player do you mirror your game with? I want to see which players do these guys watch tape from and want to be like. I know Quinnen Williams, he's expressed that he watches Aaron Donald a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I compare him a little bit. I don't think he's going to be as dominant as Aaron Donald because Aaron Donald is one of the best defensive players I've ever seen. But Quinnen Williams is going to be a fantastic player. He's trying to do all the same moves that Aaron Donald can do. And if you could compare yourself with a player, I want to hear what kind of guys if you could be at the top, if you want to learn from these guys, or if you're going to be more like the average guy. I want to hear who you want to be like.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'd like to hear that one and kind of hear why. Let them explain it. I think that's a good one. Another one for me, and this one's about football too, but I'd want to create a scenario of a game and have them create a play. It is to go for any position, but I think it'd be interesting to see, especially if you're talking to a receiver. Like if I was talking to a receiver, I'd create a play or create a scenario where probably a run game. A run would be the best play situation, but I'd be curious to see if they drop a play for them and for their position, or if they drop a play what's best for the team. Just to kind of get a feel of their football mind and if they're team-oriented or if they're themselves-oriented. I think that'd be an interesting question to talk about and discuss, and that's one that I would do.
Yeah, I really like that one, and that leads me to my last question, and that's involving the X's and O's. If I showed them a scheme in this situation, if they were on offense or defense, what are they going to do here? And that's what I was reading what the Colts do in their interviews. They have 15 minutes. Chris Bauer, the GM, he just hands it off to Frank Wright, and they just talk football. He puts that player in their team and shows them clips of what they did in different situations and wants to hear if that player will do the same thing and what can they improve on in those situations. So that's what I would do, focus on the X's and O's, and if they can really fit in that scheme and if that player wants to play for that coach.
Yeah, that's a great one, and I would look at whatever the Colts are doing, 'cause what a draft they had last year.
It's working.
Quentin Nelson and, of course, Darius Leonard. So that's a great one. And my last one, not about football, but I think it's a great question. I know you're going to like this one. I want you to answer this one because I know you're a huge fan.
I'll answer.
But if you could be any Star Wars character, who would you be?
Okay. Interesting. I'm Boba Fett's my favorite guy here. But I also like Han Solo a little bit. He's a little rebellious. He's going to do his own thing. I know maybe a lot of teams don't really want to hear that from players, that they're pretty individual. But I think it does work in some situations. So that's what I would kind of hear also. Kind of if you're like a Darth Vader, you want to be on the dark side, but you want to take charge and defeat everybody. I know I compared the Patriots to the dark side. Bill Belichick and Tom Brady, that is the dark side of Star Wars. So I think that would be a very good question to ask.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting because I think what's cool about Star Wars is the dark side is a lot of cool. My favorite character is Darth Maul. I think he's the coolest, him and the Joker are the coolest villains I've ever seen. But there's a lot of cool characters, so I'd be curious to see if someone chooses someone from the dark side. Then I think that's someone that really... kind of, how there's always those athletes that like being hated, those guys that like the spotlight. I think Baker Mayfield's one of them. I think he likes being hated, and so I'd be curious if they go that route or if they take the good side. So I think that'd be a good question to ask. It'd be fun to see the responses.
And if they didn't say they have ever watched Star Wars or haven't or will, I'm not going to draft you. I'll just keep moving on from that.
Kean Davis, if you're listening, that's for you. Go watch Star Wars. You're missing out big time. But those are kind of the combine questions we draft up, but. Definitely, I mean, if you have a second, we're coming up on a break here. Go to the break. Just type in craziest combine questions because these sound outrageous, but there are a lot of crazy ones out there. These GMs spend these 15 minutes asking some crazy questions. Very interesting stuff to talk about, and those are ours. Yeah, it's a great part of the NFL Combine. That is the interview. They got 15 minutes to ask questions. This is really the only time they get to spend with the players before the draft. It's only one-on-one with them, so it's a big part of the Combine. Not everybody gets to see, and it's really a big piece of it all. That's for sure. But that wraps up the NFL talk. We still got one more segment with you guys, so stay tuned. We're going to move back to the hoop side of things and give you some predictions where we stand right now with big-time free agents in the NBA offseason. So stay tuned. It's going to be a great ending. We'll be right back.